Hello chaps, Paul Curran here. I hope you and all the listeners are well. The Soldier by Rupert Brooke. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is forever England. There shall be in that rich earth a richer dust concealed, a dust whom England bore, shaped, made aware, gave once her flowers to love, her ways to roam. A body of England's, breathing English air, washed by the rivers, blessed by the sons of home. And think, this heart, all evil shed away, a pulse in the eternal mind, no less gives somewhere back the thoughts by England given. Her sights and sounds, dreams happy as her day, and laughter learnt of friends, and gentleness in hearts at peace under an English heaven. Brooke sailed with the British Mediterranean Expeditionary Force on the 28th of February 1915, but developed sepsis from an infected mosquito bite. He died at 4:46 p.m. on the 23rd of April 1915 on the French hospital ship, the Duguay-Trouin, moored in a bay off the Greek island of Skyros in the Aegean Sea, while on his way to the landing at Gallipoli. As the expeditionary force had orders to depart immediately, Brooke was buried at 11 p.m. in an olive grove on Skyros. I was recently given a collection of Rupert Brooke's poems by my friend Ross, and inside, someone in days gone by had attached this account of the burial of Rupert Brooke. At his feet was a small wooden cross sent by his platoon. We could not see the grave again as we sailed from Skyros next morning at 6. Dennis Brown, his close friend, who wrote the above, again writes on June the 2nd, 2 days before his own death. Coming from the Alexandria yesterday, we passed Rupert Island at sunset. The sea and sky in the east were grey and misty, but it stood out in the west, black and immense, with a crimson glowing halo round it. Every colour had come into the sea and sky to do him honour, and it seemed that the island must ever be shining with his glory that we buried there. There's also this. A friend of mine in the RAF, on returning from Greece a while back, gave me the enclosed photograph of Rupert Brooke's grave, which he had obtained while there. I think it would be of interest to many of your readers. Perhaps you would also find room for a short quotation from Rupert Brooke's memoir, which briefly describes the simple burial and grave of him whose brilliant career was so short, and whose untimely end we all deplore. The quotation will add interest to the photograph for those who have not read the memoir. It reads, "Here, Skyros, then, in the island where Theseus was buried, and whence the young Achilles and the young Pyrrhus were called to Troy, Rupert Brooke died and was buried on Friday the 23rd of April, the day of Shakespeare and of St. George. We buried him the same evening in an olive grove, where he had sat with us on Tuesday, one of the loveliest places on this earth, with grey-green olives round him, one weeping above his head, the ground covered with a flowering sage, bluish-grey and smelling more delicious than any flower I know. The path up to it from the sea is narrow and difficult, and very stony. It runs by the bed of a dried-up torrent. We had to post men with lamps every 20 yards to guide the bearers. He was carried up from the boat by his A Company petty officers, led by his platoon sergeant Saunders, and it was with enormous difficulty that they got the coffin up the narrow way. The journey of a mile took 2 hours. It was not till 11 that I saw them coming. I'd gone up to choose the place, and with Freyberg and Charles Lister, I turned the sods of his grave. We had some of his platoon to dig. First came one of his men carrying a great white wooden cross with his name painted on it in black. Then the firing party, commanded by Patrick, and then the coffin, followed by our officers and General Paris and one or two others of the brigade. Think of it all under a clouded moon, with the 3 mountains around and behind us, and those divine scents everywhere. We lined his grave with all the flowers we could find, and Quilter set a wreath of olive on the coffin. The funeral service was very simply said by the chaplain, and after the last post, the little lamp-lit procession went once again down to the narrow path to the sea. Freyberg, Charles and Clegg Kelly stayed behind and covered the grave with great pieces of white marble which were lying everywhere about. The phrase dulce et decorum est is the first words of a Latin saying, taken from an ode by Horace, and these words would have been widely understood and often quoted at the start of the First World War. They mean it is sweet and right, dulce et decorum est. The full saying ends the poem I'm about to read, and the full saying is this: dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, which translates as, it is sweet and right to die for your country. In other words, it's a wonderful and great honour to fight and die for your country. This poem is by Wilfred Owen, of course. Dulce et decorum est. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep, many had lost their boots, but limped on blood-shod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil's sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. The group of artists known as the Scottish colourists included Peploe and Cadell, and both men survived the war, and to recover they travelled to Iona and Mo to paint. This is a sonnet from my second book, Repeat Fees, called Ward Artists, which touches upon that subject. Left-hand Cadell, like saddle, not cradle, and fellow Scottish colourist Peploe, whose elegant painted legacies show bright yet perspectiveless fruit on table, unentrenched, made attempts, minds unstable as unpinned spinning mills bombs thrown below, to catch the Isle of Mull and Iona's glow, shunning so society's mislabel. Framed efforts surviving, though both men gone, divide to each merits equally strong. White sailing boat one, beneath Ben Moore's height, vented by peace, not demented clarion. Second, hints at rocks where no rocks belong. As both longed, through art, War's wrong to tint right. The well-known marching song of 1915. Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, 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 while you've a Lucifer to light your fag. Smile, boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.